Completely Booked. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Justin. If you're a frequent listener to Completely Booked, you probably heard my voice from time to time in the background, asking questions or making contributions. This episode was my idea. Every year this time of year, I look forward to an event called TubaChristmas. And this year in Jacksonville, it's celebrating its 25th anniversary. We sat down with Suna, who started the TubaChristmas here in Jacksonville, and Marc Dickman, a professor at UNF, who is our conductor every year. What is a TubaChristmas? Well, it's a free concert where tuba and euphonium players get together and play Christmas music for an hour every year.
So if this podcast piques your interest and you're interested in seeing Justin along with 150 other tuba players, join them at Seawalk Pavilion December 14th at 1:30 p.m.
Suna and Marc tell us about the origins of TubaChristmas, both nationally and here in Jacksonville, and also what to expect if you come to the concert.
So without further ado, here's our podcast with Suna and Marc. Welcome to Completely Booked, Suna and Marc. We are so excited to have you here. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Certainly. I grew up in South Africa. I studied the piano all through school, but when I was growing up, I could hear symphonies over the radio, and I never heard of anything like a brass band or a wind ensemble. So I came to this whole scene very late, unlike Marc, but I must say it has just been wonderful. It's opened a whole new world to me, and I love playing the euphonium, which my husband encouraged me to do. He was a tuba player, and so we had a lot of fun doing that together.
Hello, I'm Marc. I teach out at UNF. I started there in 1986, and I grew up in Valdosta, Georgia, and went through the band program there, and then majored in music at Troy State University, and then ended up getting hired here at UNF in 86.
So, TubaChristmas is coming up. Can you tell us both a little bit about TubaChristmas and how long it's been going on?
Well, it's a very exciting event because it's so colorful and it's not something that people see every day. It was started in 1974 by the late, great Harvey Phillips, who was a tuba enthusiast, and he wanted to pay some respect to his favorite instrument, and also he wanted to honor his teacher, who was strange name, William Bell or Bill Bell. And of course, he played an instrument with a big bell. But anyway, that started in 1974. And of course, we only started here in Jacksonville in 1995.
So do you know anything else about the history of the event nationally?
Well, when Harvey started this, he was the tuba teacher at Indiana in Bloomington, and he was also a genius at promotion. And he wanted to do an event that would draw tuba and euphonium players together and have fun, but also show people that the tubas were capable of something other than playing the oompa part on the bottom end of any ensemble that they happened to be in. And he was friends with the composer Alec Wilder, because Harvey and his teacher were also New York studio tuba players. And so when Harvey had this idea, he replaced Bill Bell as the tuba teacher at Indiana, and that was the first full-time tuba professor in the world, I believe. And so he would come up with these different ideas by commissioning composers for works and then doing the TubaChristmas. So that first one, the ones in New York City will have 500-600 players. And ours last year had about 200, but most of the other events, I don't know how many there are, 50, 60, 70 around the country.
Well, I just did some homework yesterday. We used to say there are about 150. I looked on the internet, the TubaChristmas, and there are 318 cities listed for this year. I don't know what has suddenly happened, but it's growing like mushrooms.
That's fantastic.
Is it only in the United States or is it international?
This year, there are 3 in Canada and 1 in Costa Rica. Now, over the years, there have been some events in foreign countries, but it's usually, my guess is, military people who get stationed overseas. And they said, hey, let's have a little tuba Christmas here. And this year, the only one is Costa Rica. So
Now, a little story. The first one of these I ever played in. I'm from Ohio. The first one I ever played in was Dayton, Ohio. And when I was in high school as a teenager, it was really cold. It was snowing, in fact. It was at night. And the conductor of that TubaChristmas, Harvey Phillips.
wow.
Because Dayton, Ohio is not very far from Bloomington. And I think he had just retired as the tuba instructor at Indiana. And also, the rehearsal before the concert was in the old Howard Music location in downtown Dayton, which the music store has since left, and the library bought the building in Dayton. So that building that I rehearsed at my first TubaChristmas in with Harvey Phillips is now part of the Dayton Metro Library,
That's
which is
pretty
kind of
cool.
cool. The New York one, it's in front of Rockefeller Center on the ice rink.
That would be a sight
Not
to
cold
see.
there.
That would be very nice to see.
But we have it so good here. I think we got rained out once or twice over 20 years, but
Twice,
we've been really
then.
lucky.
So
but
where is it this year?
We're at the Seawalk Pavilion, Jacksonville Beach, which is this great, I call it a band shell, but it's an amphitheater. Is that the correct term for it? And when I see the pictures of the New York TubaChristmas, and they're all bundled up and things like that, it's like, wow, I'm really glad we're down here in Florida.
Yeah. And when is the event?
December 14th.
It is the 14th.
We're starting a little earlier this year. It's a new venue, so the start time is 9:30 as far as rehearsal, not for what I call the civilians. But so we have a rehearsal the same day, so it's easier. There's just one day, but the players will show up in the morning, will rehearse and have a short break, and then the concert will start at 1:30, I believe.
And the event is free.
Free.
Yeah, very cool. So you guys are obviously experts, so you know what to expect, but I've never been to one, and maybe some of our listeners haven't. So tell me what we can expect to see and experience, what the vibe is going to be like at TubaChristmas.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's big and brassy and shiny. Well, not just the kids, but people really get into this. They decorate their horns with all kinds of Christmas tinsel. Sometimes, especially the ones with sousaphones, they like to put funny faces on there. And it's just very colorful. And of course, it's very different. It's not what people usually hear. It's low and deeply moving.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. So to me, there's only one type of tuba that I can think of that comes to mind, but I know that there are several. Can you tell us what types of tubas we'll be able to see at TubaChristmas?
Well, the sousaphone was the instrument developed by John Philip Sousa, used in marching bands. And it's a tuba that you put over your shoulder. I say it's the only instrument that you wear, okay? And it has the big forward-facing bell. But the tuba, the metal in the tuba can be wrapped in different configurations. And so tubas used for orchestras and concert bands basically are held in the lap or on a stand in front of the player. And the wrap of the instrument is different, so the bells will be pointing straight up. And the original sousaphones had straight up pointing bells because John Philip Sousa wanted the bass sound of the band to kind of just come from everywhere and not be really directional. But for the marching band purposes, you want the bass to be directional, hence forward-facing bells. So the same with euphonium. The euphoniums have a lot of different wraps. The British-style euphoniums have a straight-up facing bell with, we call the top action valves. And then the Germanic euphoniums will have maybe rotary valves, and they're wrapped in an oval shape with sometimes a forward-facing bell. So there are a lot of different configurations. That's one of the things that causes confusion in the low brass area, where pretty much a trumpet's a trumpet or a cornet, and they're all wrapped the same. The bell points in the same direction. There's some really interesting websites. One of my friends has a beautiful website called vintagecornets.com. But when you start looking at these vintage instruments and seeing that they came up with different wraps, and also we deal with either piston valves or rotary valves, and those cause the instrument to be very different looking on the surface.
So which tuba do you guys play?
I play a euphonium.
Okay.
And the euphonium can also be called the tenor tuba, or it's very commonly called baritone horn in this country.
And mine is a rather unique instrument in that it's a double bell euphonium. You don't see many of them. Mine was made in 1931, I think one of the last ones.
Wow.
But because they were trying to pitch this to band leaders, hey, you get a 2-for-1. Out of the one bell, it sounds like a euphonium. Out of the other bell, it sounds like a trombone. But apparently that never really caught on. Like I find with mine, we try to tune the trombone part of it, but it won't go. But here's the funny thing. You don't see those instruments often, and yet in our TubaChristmas here and in the community band in which I play, there are two of us. The other one was built in 1906. It's just a beautiful old instrument. He's always polishing it and taking good care of them. But those are rare birds. You don't see them much.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Justin?
Oh, I have a euphonium. It's a pretty standard 4-piston valve on the top euphonium.
Is it compensating?
Probably not.
What brand is it?
Well, I'm a trombone player.
Oh, okay.
So I basically bought the euphonium to play in TubaChristmas.
Oh, great.
And to play every December.
That's what we want to hear.
So it is actually one of those Chinese horns that costs like $350 because I just got it to play.
Perfect.
And I got it in the mail, and I'm like, because I had no expectations whatsoever. I was just like, this thing is going to be awful. And I got it out of the box. I put the mouthpiece in. I'm like, this thing plays. It actually doesn't sound terrible either. And now, I mean, it's 15 years old now, and I keep playing it. So I played it in a orchestra concert last night instead of my trombone for most of the time. So
That's cool.
What is the community band that you play in, Suna?
Clay County Community Band. Yes, and they've been there about 30 years. I was one of the early members. And it's a typical band, but that has grown over the years. We must have 75 members that they come and go, and we give concerts, free concerts to the community. It's mostly to give people an opportunity to play and enjoy making music.
Yep.
Now, I also conduct a community band up in Fernandina Beach called the Nassau Community Band. And the way I got this job was a couple of members of the band who always play in TubaChristmas. And when their conductor took a leave of absence, they contacted me and said, do you know anybody that would want to conduct this band? And I thought of a couple of names and gave them a couple of names, and they checked with them, and they said, well, would you like to do that? And my initial response was no. And then I got to thinking, my background and everything is in wind conducting, and I'm a euphonium player, so I do have a lot of what we call wind band. I don't know if you use the term, but wind band. That's kind of the old way of saying wind ensemble, concert band type, as opposed to orchestra. Okay, so I started in on an interim basis, and now I've been there. This is my third year, so we really enjoy that. But the big wave, the big new thing, which isn't new, are community bands. And like just in Jacksonville, there are at least 4
community bands.
Community bands, community orchestra.
And there's the Pops Orchestra that I'm in. There's the Civic Orchestra. There's an orchestra in St. Augustine.
There used to be a Jacksonville community band, but I wonder if that's still around. Do you know?
Well, there's the I forget what they call it now. Dale Blackwell is the conductor of that, and then that's continuing. And then there's a relatively newer one in St. Augustine as well. But if you're on the north side of town or up in Nassau County, you can come. And again, it's amateur groups, and we have fun. And they're, like I say, people come and go. And that's
how do people
too.
Get in contact to be involved in the community bands?
We have Facebook page and things like that, and there's phone numbers. So
Clay County Band has a website, I'm pretty sure. Usually if you start searching the internet, it's amazing how things just pop up.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's talk about the challenges you faced before the internet and getting the word out about tuba.
Yeah. How did this start in 1995?
I remember that. So I was, trying to remember back, and I said, oh my God, we've come a long way, because it started at Clay County Band. We were just talking during intermission one night, and one guy said, oh, he used to play in TubaChristmas in Washington, D.C. And my husband had once participated in Boston before we moved here. So I knew what it was. And we talked, and somebody said, well, why don't we have a TubaChristmas in Jacksonville? And I said, I don't know. What can we do about it? And someone pointed at me and my husband and said, well, why don't you start it? We said, okay, maybe we will. And when I got home that night, I started going through old files. And sure enough, I had saved the program from the one in Boston. And there was the phone number and the contact, and it was Harvey Phillips. So we called up and we said, we're thinking of starting a TubaChristmas here in Jacksonville. What do we do? And they said, well, find yourself a conductor. That was pretty easy because Bill Moffett had retired here, and we can maybe talk about Bill Moffett some more, but his name immediately came up. They said, find a venue. Well, the Landing was the obvious place, and somebody who worked there in marketing had worked with TubaChristmas in Baltimore. So she was immediately on board, and they said, well, you just order some music books from us and you're good to go. Well, those were the days I sat down with the yellow pages. Remember those? And I just called every school that I could find all through Northeast Florida, surrounding counties. I would telephone and say, do you have a band program? Yes. Can you give me your address, please? And I wrote letters and wrote the addresses and mailed these things out. And so obviously it was a lot of work, but it was amazing. The people asked me, somebody came from the newspaper and said, how many people do you think are going to be there? And I said, well, I will be very disappointed if we don't get 50 people. I will be delighted if we get 100. And, meantime, I'm just constantly calling these schools and say, hey, are you going to send your kids? Will we see you there? And the first year we had 65 participants. So needless to say, it was very exciting.
Yeah, for several years, we would get 75 and 80, and we seemed to had kind of leveled off. And was it in the last 5 or 6 years where every year it just kept ticking up where we had last year?
It suddenly jumped because Rob Van Eck put us on Facebook, and that made the big difference. I'm not even savvy enough to do that. He said, hey, I put us on social media, and we suddenly jumped from about 118 to over 150. And now last year we had 187. So
wow.
we're shooting for 200 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody may take their tuba in the ocean, since we're out there at the ocean.
I think that would be very excellent publicity if someone would like to volunteer to do that.
Justin,
you will be celebrated.
What type of music can we expect to hear at TubaChristmas?
The original TubaChristmas music was all arranged by Alec Wilder. and he's a very famous composer and wrote many famous pop tunes, 40s, 50s, and things like that. And what we have done is used the original, and I'm wondering, well, probably the Bill Moffitt arrangements were probably the first arrangements that weren't original TubaChristmas arrangements, and the Bill Moffitt was a very well-known and respected arranger for marching bands. When I was in high school, he had a arrangement called The Horse, which was a rock tune, but every band played that like in the 70s and things like that. So he was well known, and he retired and had family in Jacksonville, moved to Jacksonville. And so he donated a lot of his things to the repertoire and their more pop music oriented pop Christmas tunes rather than Christmas hymns type music, but recognizable Christmas music. And because of that, some of the board said, "Hey, let's arrange a couple of guys on the board. Larry Tallman, he's a good arranger, so he's said, hey, we don't do this song. Let's arrange this song for the group." So, every couple of years we added 1, 2, or 3 songs. And how many years ago did we add a drummer to the performance?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. That was your thing. You said we need a drummer quite a few years, and that has made it easier to keep the whole group together.
Some of the stuff we do are kind of jazzy and poppy, and it's just nice to have the drummer sits in the middle, poor guy, and, plays his part there, and it just adds a little bit to the group. I've heard some others do add drummers.
Oh, I was curious about that.
Very few. Very few. Like
it seems like a unique Jacksonville thing to have the drummer and to do the other music, like the Bill Moffitt arrangements and whatnot, because other groups, they just play out of the TubaChristmas book.
People who've come here from other places have said they love this because you eventually get so tired of the same old music. And we actually have added a lot. Bill Moffitt was the first. He conducted that first year. He took to it. He was a great showman. As soon as it was over, he said to us, "You know what? I think I can make some better arrangements than what you have here." And we said, "All right, Bill, go for it." But what he did was he made a lot of the arrangements simpler and easier because we get very young players. And some of those original tunes were just too complicated. So I would say we're about half and half of the originals. And then about half are now ones that we have added. And I can't resist saying this. It does span the whole range of Christmas music. O Come, Emmanuel. Mark always says that's his famous. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. I always cringe, and the audience just loves it.
It's a fan favorite.
It's
a fan favorite. And the other one is the Chipmunk Christmas song. I mean,
yes.
Where else can you go to get these things? No place else.
And we also played the dreidel song for the non-Christmas group.
We must have our token Hanukkah song, and we do have that. Yep.
And how long is the performance?
An hour.
An hour?
1 hour. And in fact, I think I sent you a stern email and said, because we are in this new venue where somebody else is in charge, and they are going to have us off of that stage after an hour, I don't think they will let us stay 5 more minutes over, because coming behind us are little ballet dancers, and they all there with grandma and aunts and uncles, and they want their time. So this year it's going to be definitely 1 hour, 1:30 to 2:30, and we are out of there.
That will be interesting.
Well, the guy who's in charge over there, the organizer, said, "Well, we'll just have to fling those chairs off the stage." I said, "Okay, we'll see."
So you mentioned the young players once in a while. So the age range of the players, It's very vast. You actually give out awards for the oldest member and the youngest member every year.
Absolutely. We almost every year there is some kid who's 10. Sometimes it's one who's 12. And we always say, wait, who's the youngest one here? I think 10 is about the cutoff, but there's always one. And the oldest is very often 89. We ran into a problem there because you give the reward to somebody this year, he's the oldest. Well, he comes back next year, he's still the oldest. And he comes back the next year and he's still the oldest. So then we started saying, okay, who has never received this reward yet? You're the runner-up this year. But it's just fun to recognize that. And especially we also look for the largest group from one school. And that has started a bit of friendly competition among the schools, which is nice. We give them all a little prize.
Should we do the best decoration this year?
That came up before, and I said, oh boy, that makes me nervous because it's a judgment call. And oh boy, who's going to be the judge and whose feelings are you going to hurt? Will you deal with all the people?
I volunteer.
Whoa. All right.
We could vote.
Call it the Conductor's Award for Best Decoration.
You serious, Mark? You want to do this, huh? All right. You maybe have a lot of people with hurt feelings, but I've got prizes there. We can do that.
What are you going to win?
You don't know. Whatever she...
No, maybe I'll put it out to the entire board. How many do we have on the board? 5 or 6, I think.
Just an idea. That's all. Just an idea. Something to have fun. Something fun and goofy. We also give the award for the person that came for the farthest. And we have somebody that, lives in New Zealand, but he comes here for Christmas. And, well, I came from New Zealand for this. And it's kind of, yeah, okay.
And he brings his tuba from New Zealand to play?
Well, he'll borrow one.
Okay.
Yeah,
sometimes they do. I mean, maybe it's a euphonium smaller. And so sometimes you can get the euphonium in the up top part of the plane and not have to check it.
And if you have a plastic one, then you don't have to worry about weight.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. There was a guy who came a number of years because he was a flight attendant. And he would just fly all over the country and try to take in as many TubaChristmases as he could.
I actually have wondered if there was somebody like that, like a TubaChristmas groupie who traveled around the country and to go to them every weekend.
Yeah.
Because it would be hard to go to all of them because they happen all at the same time. But you could try to go to as many as possible.
Definitely. That was a flight attendant. But also one year there was a high school kid, and he said his goal was to attend everyone that was in Florida that year. Now, this year we have 11 events in Florida, but I think at that time maybe there were 8. And this kid had his mother. In fact, he played with us that day from 2 to 3. And he said, all right, my mother is taking me over to Tampa right now so I can go play there. And, people get so excited about this, and especially the young people. It's a special deal for them. So
I think it's interesting that you guys just have one rehearsal before you play. Like, you don't meet before that? Everybody just shows up? Do you know how many people are going to show up to play in the performance?
We call it a y'all come. Now, I think this year, because they want us to do some kind of paperwork, that's going to be sent out. So we might have a kind of a little bit of pre-registrant. Some stuff has gone out, but when they get there, they still have to fill out it's just so common nowadays, the hold harmless form or whatever, and that's just pretty much the times we live in.
Of course, this year with a new venue, we had to take out insurance.
Yeah, liability issues.
Right. Mm-hmm. We never had to do that before.
Because Grandma did get run over by that reindeer.
You never know. Somebody might pick up their euphonium and start swinging around like that Browns player against the Steelers quarterback.
Well, in all seriousness, there was a fellow who, his name escapes me. He he is now a band director in Fernandina. Maybe you know him, but he came here as a high school student. He walked in with the biggest, shiniest tuba that blew everybody's mind, and people were asking him, how much did you pay for that thing? And I mean, it was thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's when my husband, who came from a business background, said, you know what, if that kid's tuba gets damaged here, we're going to be sued because they're going to go after the deep pockets. And that's when we decided to incorporate. So it is now TubaChristmas Inc. and has been for a lot of years. And
I guess that's what you have to do.
That's what you have to do. And as I say, the beach wanted us to get insurance, so we got it. That's it.
And I don't think we touched on this, but how long have each of you been playing the tuba?
Well, let's see. I'm 59, and I started when I was in 6th grade. I started on trumpet, and then 7th grade, I started on, we called it baritone, and then I added trombone later. So a long time, almost 50 years.
I was a very late starter. I was 55 before I ever put a horn to my lips. But, well, because, and that was my husband, I just saw he retired and started playing his tuba. And I was amazed how many bands, community bands, opportunities you find to play. So I got rather envious looking at how much fun he had. And I said, hey, I'd like to play something too. And he was smart. He said, now look, you may not be able to hack this, so let's buy you a euphonium. If it doesn't work out, I used to play euphonium in high school, so I'd like to have it. Well, the rest is history. I practiced very hard. I didn't even take lessons. He just showed me how to read the notes, and I've loved it.
That's an amazing story.
It is. It's just broadened my horizons. He and I started a little oompa band that plays in October, and I still do that. I run it, and we have a lot of fun with it. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
I love oompa bands.
World. Yeah.
I love like Oktoberfest and all the oompa bands.
That's me.
Yeah.
But with the community bands, and when my band up in Fernandina performs, part of it is we always ask the audience, hey, raise your hand if you were in band or orchestra back in the day. And, a lot of people say, well, get your horn and come up here. But people are like, well, I haven't played in 20 or 30, 40 years. But it's not an audition situation. We just want to have people have fun. And you will have fun if you get an instrument and come and play with an adult band. Whatever you remember from high school, it's totally different than when you were in high school and things like that. There's no pressure. People aren't called out during rehearsal. You're not say, okay, you got to play a solo. Okay, none of that happens. And people think back and think, oh, well, it's totally different. So give it a try. Get the horn out. So many people keep their instruments. They have it for sentimental reasons. So get it out and join the band, and you will have a good time.
The group I play in, for years I was the only trombone player in the Pops Orchestra, which was a struggle for me because, I wanted it to be fun like that. But as the only person on the instrument, I really had to know what I was doing. And now we have 3, so I get to relax a bit and have fun.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with the tuba group. There's so many. And I think usually maybe once a year we'll have a young student that'll just, feel terrible. And they'll come for a few minutes and then I got to get out of here. I can't play all this music and all this stuff. And if we can talk them down, just stay. If you can't play it, just don't play. Oh, is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Well, back in their school program, if they do that, that's a no-no. But here, there's no pressure to do that. If somebody wants to sit there and with their horn on their lap and just enjoy hearing it, or, play, if you know that note, oh, that's an F, play an F. And then if you don't play anything else, don't play anything else.
Yeah, I wanted to say Mark is very good as a conductor because you asked, how can we do it with just one rehearsal? Well, he does a very good job, and especially talking to the young kids and say, hey, listen, if this piece is too difficult, don't play it. Listen to the two people next to you, listen and follow the music, and maybe next year you'll be able to play it. And we also try to encourage the kids to go and sit next to an adult. Don't just sit next to your buddy who's also nervous and doesn't know how to play. Go sit next to an adult person who can help you out.
And they don't bite. Those kids, they don't bite, which is really good to know.
So Suna testified to your amazing teaching abilities. You also are a teacher at UNF. Can we talk about some of the classes you teach at UNF?
All right, right now I teach applied low brass instruments, which includes tuba, euphonium, and trombone. And if you major in music at a college in the United States, part of your curriculum is to take what they call applied lessons, which is a private lesson.
Yep.
And normally they run for an hour a week, and the students are given assignments and perform different groups and things like that. And I conduct one of our 3 jazz ensembles at UNF. We started back in 1986, and the jazz program is internationally recognized, and we're very fortunate to have 3 jazz bands. And we do 5 performances a semester, 5 or 6, so we're out there. It is. It is a lot, but this is the students, they want to play, and so that's what we do. We get out there and play. Now, if you think back to the history of the bands, the bands that were playing a lot were playing, well, maybe not semester, but they were playing, 200 and 300 performances a year, almost every day. Or back in the day, they were playing more than once a day. So you can't replicate that. But if you compare that to that, it's like, okay, we get it. Yeah. So we get multiple times. There's some of the larger ensembles might perform once or twice a semester, and they're doing, I wouldn't say more complex music, because we play some very difficult, complex music. But then we're able to play it several different times in concert situations, which really helps for the ensemble to sound good and good training for the student musicians.
Do you have a favorite conductor?
Of what?
Well, yeah. We normally ask about books. Like, what is your favorite book? But so if you want to add like something about favorite books, then we can also start talking about favorite music. Like, Mark, if someone didn't know anything about jazz, what would you recommend they start with?
Probably some Louis Armstrong.
Okay.
Some of that early swing. You talked about books. My favorite book is the one I'm reading now. That's, because I read a lot. And I'm reading a great book called Lost Chords, and it's a history of early jazz.
Okay.
And so Louis Bixbyter-Beck, there's a great chapter on Jack Teagarden, Mildred Bailey, Red Norvo, things like that. I call them the early swingers, but I also listen a lot to, talk books. So for a musician, a recording is the book.
Right.
And with the internet and whatnot, I've never really used Spotify that much, but I use Pandora, where if you put in an artist, let's say Clark Terry, and so
it gives you things similar to them.
Right. And it's very, the lot of things you may or may not have in your collection, but it's similar to stuff you like. But all the mainstream bands, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Woody Herman, and all that stuff, and then a lot of small group stuff from Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, to modern stuff. I don't know if you've heard of Snarky Puppy.
Mm-mm.
Well, they're a fusion group. Back in the day, my favorite fusion stuff was Return to Forever, the Chick Corea group, and John McLaughlin had a really good group, and then Pat Metheny.
Oh yeah,
that type of stuff. So and the students will always be the ones to say, "Oh, here, check this out. I'd heard the name Snarky Puppy. It's a great name. And it's like the students were talking about this group, Snarky Puppy. I finally listened to them. And I was like, oh, that's why, because it's really good. First of all, what's fusion? Well, jazz rock fusion or whatever. And but they're great players playing it. And so it's really interesting and engaging.
I'll check out Snarky Puppy. I wonder if we have it here in our collection.
You probably do.
It may be on Hoopla.
Might be on Hoopla. And what about you, Suna?
No, I'm listening to Mark and saying to myself, I hope she doesn't ask me that question. I just skim along the surface. That's about all I can say. Basically, I like symphonic music, which is why I'm going to the symphony this morning. But that's okay. I've really enjoyed this Tuba Christmas music. And, I don't mind listening to jazz either. I enjoy that.
But part of the music students' education and reading these books, the jazz musicians, most part, and even the symphonic musicians, they listen to everything. So I might make a living as a jazz musician, but I have, hundreds of recordings of mainstream, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. Brass players really like Mahler and
we
Bruckner, and things like that. So that's also part of what I like and listen to, and it's all music. Duke Ellington said there's two kinds of music: good music and bad music.
Yeah, the symphony did Bruckner 7 last year, and I loved listening to it. But after I got done listening to it, the concert, I realized, okay, so that can't be as much fun for the brass players to play that 3 days in a row, because their faces are probably feel like they're going to fall off. But
they, not to say it's not difficult, but for professional brass players, that's what we live for. And so, it's part of your daily practice, and the symphony players will have, when they see that on the calendar, they've played it. It's not like, oh, I guess I'd better get out the music for this. No, they have been working on all those excerpts for years. And so it's a matter, and that's one of the things we try to tell the students is the symphonic players, you might have 2 rehearsals and a concert, and it's played at the very highest level. With student groups, especially in high school, you rehearse stuff for a year before you do a concert maybe. And so the level of playing and the preparation for the concert is not at the rehearsal. It's in the practice room. Because when you get to rehearsal, all the notes and rhythms and things like that. So there's my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know?
Well, we'll see you at the Seawalk Pavilion. You better be there.
All right. And the date is December 14th. Yep, 1:30. That's about it. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you both on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you next year.
Thanks so much for tuning in to our Completely Booked podcast with Mark and Suna and Justin. We hope that you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed making it. And again, if you're interested in checking out Tuba Christmas, it will be at Seawalk Pavilion December 14th at 1:30 p.m.
So, Amanda, did you learn anything while talking to them?
Yeah, that there's a whole bunch of different types of tubas.
You know what I learned?
What?
I learned about Snarky Puppy.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked them up afterwards, and we do own 2 of their albums in Hoopla. I listened to one of them. I'm happy that I learned about them and I got exposed to them.
Oh, wow. I'll have to check them out. Snarky Puppy.
Also, if you get interested in jazz after hearing the names like Louis Armstrong and Bix Beiderbecke, you can watch the entire Ken Burns jazz documentary for free in Canopy.
And Justin, so how will our listeners know to find you at Tuba Christmas?
Hey, I'm going to be there with my silver euphonium, and I will be wearing a Santa hat, but I have never decorated my tuba for Tuba Christmas.
I'm interested in how people actually decorate their tuba. What do they put on it?
Oh, it gets pretty serious. Sometimes I wonder how they can still play with all of the decorations on their horn. So should we wrap this thing up?
Yeah.
Before we go, though, be sure to follow the library on social media everywhere at Jack's Library so you can keep up to date with what's going on in the libraries.
Until next time, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Justin.
Bye, guys.